Comrades, welcome to Movie Smackdown. This week we are talking about the terrible propagandic films Red Dawn. With me today are my guests Comrade Bensner returning and introducing Comrade Fox. Now that will be the last time I do a Russian accent for this entire series.
Epic.
Good call.
So we're talking about two movies today. I'm your host, McLean Hirschspiel, Comrade McLean. We're talking about one movie that is your conservative uncle's wet dream, and another movie that is the embodiment of the guy who hangs out at 7-Eleven clutching a Monster can and a cigarette. We are talking about Red Dawn 1984 and Red Dawn 2012. So we always start this podcast out with first thoughts. Mm-hmm. Usually I have my guests take the lead, but I'm actually going to take the lead this time on first thoughts. My first thoughts are, I haven't seen either of these movies in a long time. I saw the original Red Dawn when I was 15 and much more conservative. And I saw the remake when I was 13 and dumb. I liked both of them at that time. This time around, I wasn't expecting both of them to be as bad as they ended up being. So I like one's production value far more. I like the original's production value, and I feel like there's more effort. And the other one was mindless. So what are your thoughts on this?
I'm kind of in the same spot where like I there's more about the original that I respect than the remake, but they're both very flawed films. I mean, the original is pretty much completely lacking in character development and like in any facet, but there's still a couple good scenes and there's more potential for that film. I think the concept of both of them is pretty great. Like the idea of like America's invaded and we watch these kids become like a guerrilla outfit. I don't know. I find that interesting. I think the first film shows us that more realistically and better. The remake is just, oh my God, I couldn't even believe it. I was watching.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, I think like when I was watching the first one, I saw a movie that was trying to kind of figure its way out to be like a cohesive movie and, try to have some character development, but honestly, it's ultimately just, it's a bunch of people running around killing one another. And I think, and this is just me, I almost liked the remake a little better because I felt like that movie knew exactly what it was. It knew it was there to be mindless and it was there to be, just an action movie. And so I had a little bit of leaning to that one. With that said, I can appreciate the first one for attempting to be something, where the remake was just trying to entertain and just be mindless. But I also, we were talking about this a little bit before, but, I grew up watching Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Josh Hutcherson, he's all right. These are people that I know. So it's kind of more fun for me to watch them just run around like doing things as opposed to like Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen, who I don't know as well and I haven't seen as much stuff in.
Yes. These are, so I guess, these are, well, first one is propaganda. Jake, I actually really wanted you on this when I had to find someone else because you were on the same episode where we talked about Starship Troopers, which was satire of propaganda.
I was drawing a lot of comparisons between watching the original, between Starship Troopers and the original movie and how they portrayed like these kids basically like giving their lives for their cause.
The difference is one satire and one is solely heartfully meant to be that way. Yeah. Which is fun to say the least. So I'm actually going to do something a little new this time around. In last episodes, we usually just read off who was in the movie and the director. This one, we're going to do that, and then we're going to talk about a little bit of the history of each movie, and then we're going to talk about So let's start with 1984. So it was directed by John Milius. And if I pronounce his name wrong, I really don't care. And a little bit about the director. He did write parts of Apocalypse Now. I think you could probably guess which parts he wrote.
He's got a lot of writing credits.
Yeah, he was a writer.
Famous writer.
Yeah. This was his first foray into directing, I think. No, Conan the Barbarian might have been.
Hey,
You're getting an idea of what movies he made. So we have Patrick Swayze as Jed. We have Charlie Sheen as Matt, C. Thomas Howell as Robert, Leah Thompson as Erica, Darren Dalton as Daryl, Brad Savage as Danny, Jennifer Grey as Tony, Doug Tony as Aviric, and Ben Johnson as Mr. Mason, who was the teacher who died in the beginning. I felt he deserved the credit. So this movie's budget was $17 million. An opening weekend, it made over $8 million.
So it didn't do very well.
It didn't do very well.
No.
This is a movie that has only really found success because it became a cult classic amongst a lot of people who own Colt revolvers, probably.
I thought it was like really successful, like a classic movie that just hadn't aged well. I didn't realize.
I think it was more the class where it was like a cult classic amongst a very specific demographic.
Yeah, and that's coming back now, like having a movie that, probably wasn't even great when it was released, but it has this like following now. Like that type of movie is coming back now, probably because everybody has a lot of nostalgia for like the 80s and stuff.
Now its total gross was $36 million. And that's, this is a movie that was a product of its time. They actually built all the tanks for this movie. They built the helicopters. There was a real paratroopers in the opening. And fun fact, I felt like I need to talk about this to give idea how much all the explosions that happen aren't miniatures and aren't computer generated because that wasn't there. They're real explosions because the director really wanted it to feel real.
Yeah,
which
I was amazed by the production value.
And then also the 36 paratroopers at the opening there, skydivers. And when they did that, a few of them went off course. Four of them just landed in a field far away from the drop zone. One of them got stuck in a tree in a town and had to spend hours until the production crew found him trying to explain he wasn't actually a Soviet paratrooper.
Oh,
keep in mind, this is in Montana in the 80s.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just imagine that happening now in Bedminster and thinking, oh my God, that would probably get worse.
That could be its own movie. Like imagine a short film about like one of the paratroopers from Red Dawn. He has to explain, no, don't kill me. I'm not actually a Soviet paratrooper.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about John Milius a little because he is what Starship Troopers makes fun of. He is the guy who idealizes the military, conservative talking points, and violence in general. He was a writer for Dirty Harry too. So this gives you the idea of the type
much better film.
Much better film. I think he was a better writer. I mean, is what it comes down to.
I think he has an credit on Jaws as a writer too.
Yeah. So this is a guy who I said my description of him I had in mind the moment I finished watching Red Dawn. I would talk to this guy for about 10 minutes about military history, and we get along for those 10 minutes. And then the moment anything political was brought up, it would be an hour of us screaming at each other. Because I have this weird respect for him. Like, he gets the military part of the movies right. I like military movies. I like action movies. He gets them right to extreme degree. But he has a ideological belief. Apparently something on this film, he would walk around with a holstered gun at all times on his hip. And I heard from another podcast, The Movies That Made Us, apparently somebody worked in an office that he had worked in at one point, and they kept getting deliveries of guns and Soldier of Fortune because he had ordered them going to that office where he was writing at the time. So this guy has an ideology, and it's pretty obvious what his ideology is. So I want to get your thoughts on our director now that I've brought him up.
I mean, as far as like the decisions he was making in the film, I respect the fact that he really went really hard on the production value and really making it feel very vivid and realistic. Like if he wanted to, it's very clear that like he had this idea and he was like, I want to show how this could reasonably happen. And I want to scare people with the prospect of this happening. You know, it's the middle of the 80s, the Cold War's going on.
This was to this guy, this Red Dawn to John Milius was what Avatar was to James Cameron.
Yeah, you know what? I think that as well. Like you can tell that this is a passion project, which I really like about it. And I think I don't really care that much about his like political ideology. Like that's not something I generally care about when watching a movie.
I wouldn't bring it up, but just because his are so extreme, I felt it was necessary.
The thing is, like, no matter your political ideology, if you're honest about your views and you present them in a thoughtful way, usually I'm just going to like the movie, even if I disagree. Although I guess my issue with this movie is that he doesn't really present it in the most thoughtful way. Like it's very realistic, it's very grounded. But it's not like a thought-provoking film, I don't think, unless you like analyze it through a lens of like he's showing the dehumanization of these kids, which if he was, it'd be a lot more interesting. But you can tell like he's not really trying to do that, especially with the music.
I think
the music accentuates, like whenever one of them dies, the music accentuates it as like a heroic death. Which I wasn't.
All the music, I noticed that too, are on high notes when people die. But I wanted to also bring up something. So this movie was also a lot first. This was the first movie released with PG-13. Now I emphasize release because technically it was because of Steven Spielberg's Temple. You know, what was the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Yeah.
Created the PG-13. This was the first movie to be released with a PG-13 rating. So that's a historical presence on itself. This, at the time, was also the most violent movie to be released, with over 2 acts of violence committed a minute.
Wow.
No.
I didn't even know. Well, yeah, actually, wait, that makes sense.
That's
it's literally like
out.
Death from the opening scene.
Yeah. Actually, that's the one thing I guess I can give it, is that the action gets going right away.
There was actually something I didn't like about it, but the remake didn't do better. Like I prefer the idea of like fleshing out the characters, giving the film like a good first act before getting into it. And the movie didn't really do that, but then the remake does that, but it does it so badly that I'm like, I respect the original for just getting over it.
I mean, I think
no writing is better than bad writing.
Right, and this another important chalk mark in the history of the media industry would be Charlie Sheen's first movie.
What a legendary actor.
Now the other thing is, I want to bring this up. C. Thomas Howell, who's been in some other stuff, was a rodeo rider before this movie and taught all of them how to ride horses. And I totally unimportant, but I actually kind of just appreciate that. Yeah. About somebody, because
riding horses is tough. So like I respect all the actors for putting in the work. To, like, be able
and
to
learn that all the actors were doing that. Now let's talk about the remake and the behind the scenes to that really quick, and then we'll break them down a bit more. So this was directed by Dan Bradley. Do either of you know who Dan Bradley is?
He's a stuntman. I looked him up.
He was a stunt coordinator, particularly. He actually has some good work as a stuntman, I think. And this was the first movie, and I think last movie he's been a part of. Yeah,
you can tell that you can tell that this was directed by a stuntman.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that as a bad thing, because John Wick is directed by a stuntman and is a significantly better movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of stuntmen, despite kind of getting a portrayal sometimes as being meatheads, are actually some of the most intelligent people in film, because they want to think about safety. Now, this movie starred Chris Hemsworth as Jed Eckert, Josh Peck as Eric Eckert, Josh Hutcherson as Robert Kittner, Adria Pilecki as Tony, Isabel Lucas as Daryl Jenkins, Edwin Hodges as Danny, Will Yun-Shea as Captain Cho, and was released with a budget of $65 million. A box office it made a box office of $14 million and a total gross of $50 million. Though this movie is technically still not made its worth.
Yeah. I was reading up about it before.
I'm going to get into that, so hold off on what you're about to say. So, what is the deal with this movie? Because this movie has big names in it. They were really famous by the time 2012 happened. You know, you had Thor in it. You had the guy from Drake and Josh, who's totally on board, but I still find that funny. You had a guy who was in the Hunger Games that come out before this. You had all these people who go on to actually be good actors and other stuff. You had a recognized stuntman directing it. And, the bad guys were Korea. Except they originally weren't Korea. The bad guys were originally China. But the movie studio producing this movie was in bankruptcy by the time they could have released this movie and didn't release this movie. And that was made in 2009. So this movie never saw an opening until after all those stars who were nobodies by the time they actually made the movie. Because Chris Hemsworth hadn't been Thor by the time they'd actually make this movie. And same goes with a lot of these people. They have not made film debuts yet. So in a weird way, it was kind of a miracle for them that a lot of these people who were in this movie ended up already being in much more successful. I wouldn't say better, but successful stuff across the board.
You could say better.
Better, yeah, better stuff. I'm not familiar. I know a lot of them were in good movies. I haven't seen some of the movies they were in or TV shows. And would live on to be pretty successful people all around. The person who plays Tony in the remake is on the Orville, and she's good in that. And now, why were they changed from China to North Korea? Well, the studios had a new rule because they found out that because of a fun little movie we've already talked about, you can make a ton of money in China, even if it's a bad movie. Unfortunately, China had gotten a hold of the script before this movie was released and said, hey, we don't really like being the bad guys in this movie. Also, this is a little racist. And racism comes up in the production of this movie a few times. One is with all the Korean Chinese actors. One, a lot of them were cast with the intent of being Chinese people, which essentially when they changed the movie, their idea is, well, they all look the same, which is a fairly offensive thing. And the other thing is, a lot of the Chinese actors, or not Chinese, Asian actors were brought in from out of town, and they shot this movie in Detroit. And the thing about shooting movies in Detroit or anywhere is you're generally supposed to try to go for local actors, but they found it was cheaper to bring people from out of town in. So that was one thing they did that was unpleasing. This movie also had an incredible problem with theft because people would keep stealing all the Chinese propaganda posters when they still had as the villains. And apparently the opening explaining the backgrounds of this movie was literally done months before they released this movie. And also every Korean flag and all the Korean dialogue was dubbed in and added in after they made this movie. Anytime they say the word Korea, it was added in post. So that being said, I was a little impressed by all even their little badges on their arms were all CGI'd in. That's a little impressive, but this movie besides that earns nothing else impressive. And so I want to get your thoughts on what I've told you about the pre-production nightmare that was Red Dawn.
Well, yeah, wasn't it shot? It was put on hold. The studio wasn't able to release it for 2 years.
Yeah, so it was finished in 2009, but they couldn't release it till 2009.
Yeah, it probably got like shoved into theaters for like 2 weeks. They were like,
they tried selling it. Nobody wanted it.
I can imagine why.
Which piece of the film?
Which, if you've ever tried to sell a car to somebody, or known someone's trying to sell a car, and they're like, I'll get it. Nobody wants to buy this car. It's like, yeah, probably because your car is a death trap, man. So that being said, let's start diving into these movies. And I want to start, what do we think of the performances in the original Red Dawn?
That's interesting. I thought they were pretty decent overall. I definitely liked watching Charlie Sheen just because he's Charlie Sheen and he always brings this manic energy to whatever he's in, even if he's not trying to. I liked most of the acting. There were a couple weird lines and deliveries, but for the most part, I think the acting was fine. I liked the pilot. The pilot was really good.
Yeah, I thought he was a good addition. He brought some kind of worldliness into it. I don't want to say worldliness, but I wanted to talk about Leah Thompson. She said this was the most fun she'd ever had filming, and a lot of them apparently really enjoyed it because a lot of them, this was their first movie. And I truly believe everybody involved in the original had as much fun making it as like a young actor could be. And I imagine just being, because when I watched this movie, I was 15, and I was closer to and I probably still am close to the age of a lot of them for this original one. And it's, if you were like a younger actor, it would be pretty fun to get a movie that wasn't too dialogue heavy, and a lot of it was you get to run around with fake guns.
Yeah.
And it seemed like, so I imagine it was probably fun to make, and I seem like all the actors probably did enjoy making this, and it launched a lot of careers. And I think the actors, despite how little dialogue they had, really cared about delivering everything well and making their performances on screen pretty good. And the best actors in this movie, in my opinion, are the communists. Now, I think that's kind of because a lot of them were, one, more experienced actors, but two, they had some of the most charismatic characters in this movie. Like there's the Nicaraguan colonel who I thought he was really good because, one, he actually humanized the enemy.
Yes,
two,
I loved his character. I thought he was great.
And we'll talk about it more when we start breaking down the story of this movie.
I think my favorite part of the whole movie was that scene at the end, spoiler alert, where he's like about to shoot Patrick Swayze, but he sees he's like carrying Charlie Sheen's body. He's like, and they have this like moment where he's like, yeah, I respect you. I'm not going to kill you. Like that was the best.
And I like that his backstory was, I was once a partisan too. So
so he relates. It's like, he's a great foil.
And then they bring in this Russian Spetsnaz general who is so villainous, and I love a good tooth-biting, like background-chewing evil villain who's just like, yes, I'm here to kill the enemy. And this dude was, for like the 5 minutes he's on screen, was perfect for that. And all the Russian actors are what?
It reminded me of Professor Sumby.
Yeah, a little. All the Russian actors I thought, Nicaraguans were really good. There's the three guys who get ambushed in the beginning of the movie by the Wolverines very early on. Yeah. And I love the performance. I would like to see the movie of just those three guys bumbling around the middle of nowhere, America, making up shit. Like, I love that one guy. Hey, yeah, this is an Indian arrow. It's made of bone. That's why it feels like it's metal.
Yeah. I didn't like that scene at first, but after watching the remake, like, I have a lot of respect for it and how clumsy it all is. Like, because that's the scene where, like, you see them, like, becoming killers, but they show it, like, this progression where it's, like, the first time they do it, it's clumsy. They only get away because the people they kill are, like, really stupid.
So now let's talk about the performances of the new movie. What do we think of the acting?
I'll let Ed talk about it.
I got a text from you that really already gets your opinion about Chris Hemsworth. And this is the second bad movie me and you have both seen with Chris Hemsworth doing a bad job acting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also it's like he wasn't really in a position where he could give a good performance either. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, his accent is absolutely it's a pretty bad. I think it got better. Like, I remember there was the first couple of scenes I was watching it, and I was just like, oh my god, is that what it's like when like an American does like a really bad accent from like like when an American does like a really bad British accent or something like that? Is that what it's like? And then I think
he just sounded like Thor with indigestion.
We have to evolve.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
And like, he's just.
I don't blame any of the actors for doing.
No, I think they all had a shitty card dealt because I've seen a majority of them. I can't speak about the dude from the freaking Nickelodeon show because I think he's just a terrible actor.
Oh, Josh Peck, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's good. And
when he is given something that likes in his wheelhouse, I think, like something like Rick and Jock, he actually does that very well.
I think most of the people who took this movie took it, one, because they were pretty unknown, and B, because it was probably to get a paycheck. Because this movie, they had terrible characters. I'd honestly say the female characters in the original were treated better with slightly more respect than the female characters in this movie.
No, way better respect. Absolutely.
Two, every performance is so either ham-fisted or just unenthusiastic. It's dead. I felt dead watching performances in the movie. There's two people who I do think actually tried to give a shit in their performance, and that was the guy who played Negan from The Walking Dead, Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
He's good.
And the kid who was from The Hunger Games who played Robert.
Oh, Josh Hutcherson, yeah.
And I think that's because they got some of the better characters in this movie.
I think the thing about the remake, like if we're talking like story, like we were talking about how
I'm focusing on characters right now.
Okay.
I want to mention the casting because the original is actually cast really well.
Yeah, I believe Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen could be brothers. Yeah. I don't see Chris Hemsworth or Josh Peck being related at all.
Right. No, I think they're
breaking up.
They don't look.
You're fine on my end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is my connection's unstable. All right, whatever. The original is cast really well. The remake is like they cast like a bunch of models and movie stars. It's like it takes you so out of it and it feels so fake. Whereas in the original, it's like it feels real. Like even Charlie Sheen like plays a pretty natural kid, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like this was a movie written by a robot too, and we'll get more of that when we start talking about what we like and what we don't like. So yeah, let's start cracking. What do we like about the original Red Dawn?
Well, I mean, you guys were talking a little bit about it. I think it's cool that the fact that they did a lot of their production, like it was there, like it wasn't CGI. You couldn't like make up those explosions, like those explosions actually happened. You built all of your sets, like your set pieces rather. That's really cool. I think that's something that's you kind of have to admire and respect them for. I think there's almost some character development in the writing sometimes, but that's sort of something that you can get into when you talk about the problems, I guess. But I feel like it almost hits the mark on certain characters. Like we were talking about, like Jacob, you were talking about how these kids are becoming a guerrilla force, and you were talking about how they get developed and from being like these kids to these like reasonably skilled fighters. Like that's an interesting idea for a plot right away. I think again, you talk about it a little bit more. There are some parts where that goes awry, but the attempt is there, and the attempt is very nice.
Yeah, my favorite part of the original is absolutely the way they show the progression of these kids becoming like these hardcore killers. It's almost like Full Metal Jacket in a way, where you're just introduced to these characters and right out the gates, you're just seeing them like do these horrible fucking things, be like told to like you have to kill all these Russians. Like the dad is screaming.
Eventually, some of your own. Yeah.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, go ahead. I was just kind of making that point. And eventually, some of your own people, because they shoot one of theirs.
Yeah, no, that scene. Yeah, there are a lot of really good scenes, and I like how the scenes like show them progressing. Like again, like their first kill is really sloppy and poorly done, and when they kill the deer, the scene with the deer in the original movie is one of the best scenes because that's the moment where they become killers.
Yeah,
it's like this moment.
It's also
like,
such like this kind of American fascist moment where it's like you need to drink the blood in order to become a man. It's like, oh my god, this is like would be a punchline in Starship Troopers.
It's a punchline.
Yeah, no
remake.
Yeah, that was one thing I liked about the remake.
I hate that scene in the remake.
I like the joke where they said, "Oh, we had ever did that," because that's actually kind of I've seen that happen to people where it's like, "Oh, fish and chips, you have to eat the fish heart for good luck," and then the newest person doesn't know. Okay, the fish heart. It's like, yeah, none of us have ever done that. That's gross. Why would you believe that?
Yeah, but that's like the
everything else was terrible.
That's the epitome of why I hated that scene though. That's the epitome of why the remake doesn't work because it takes all of the actually good things about the original, it makes it like a joke, and then does horrible other shit. Yeah, it doesn't like build off of the good things of the. Anyway, going back to the original with the things I like, they show the progression, and eventually it leads to them like killing one of their own, which is like another huge moment.
Right.
And yeah, I just like seeing that progression. I think it drags a lot, and there's a lot of like silly montage stuff, but you know, like when there are like scenes, they're really dramatic. And if there was more character development behind them, this movie could have been great, I think.
Yeah.
I like, and this is something I like about movies. I like some movies not because I think they're good movies, because I appreciate what went into them and the production value
Yeah.
and the physicalness of them. I like Gettysburg. It's a boring movie, but it's real. I
agree.
like Dunkirk. Yes, it's not historically accurate to the size, but it's real. 1917, not historically accurate to the size of the battles, but very realistic. And Red Dawn is incredibly real.
Yeah.
Because everything I saw was there.
Yeah.
And that was amazing to me. I have to say, I don't like this movie the way I like other movies. I don't think I'd really go out of my way to watch this movie very often, but I also think I would watch parts of it to teach a class. Like if I was to teach a class, I would say, hey, here's how you do this type of shot, because it is technically a good movie by showing things on screen for the time period.
The big issue with the film is the writing. Like if the writing were better, it would probably be a good to great movie.
We'll get into that when we do the how would you fix it towards the end.
Yeah.
But I really think there was a lot of effort, and I really do think the people who made it enjoyed it, and like I said, for John Milius, this was what Avatar was to James Cameron.
Yeah.
This was his passion project, and it was him getting his beliefs out into the world. And no matter how much I probably would disagree with everything the guy would say, I have to say it's kind of amazing. They built real tanks. They built real helicopters. In fact, they were so real looking, the CIA investigated the set because they thought it was a paramilitary operation training American rebels.
Wow.
I am shitting you not.
As you do.
I also kind of like this is set in a rural town in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be, just thinking logistically, I think that would be the only way you could do it.
Yeah.
I think that's, if you saw this kind of thing in, like, let's say they parachute into Boston or something like that, it would be a lot harder to like control that. It would be a lot harder to see like kids get away. Like there's just so many logistical things that like the fact that it is a small town makes it so much more real and so much more like kind of it raises the stakes a little bit because you really don't have anybody else to help.
Well, and John Milius is the type of person who, even though I think he doesn't like the political ideologies, he respects people he's at war that like the country has been at war against. So I think he really does actually, in a weird way, respect the Soviets for their like ability to be able to fight the Afghanistan. Because like obviously a lot of the stuff with the horses is based off of the Mujahideen, and a lot of the tactics they use were based off of Vietnamese tactics.
Yeah. The movie emphasizes like military tactics a lot. I mean, the first scene is them learning about like Genghis Khan and his military tactics.
They actually use that. That's how they kind of explain how they get they get defeated at the end. They're encircled and pushed out. Yeah,
right.
Because I think he kind of says, he sees the Soviet Union as the modern Genghis Khan, which Do I think America is the good guys in the Cold War? No. Do I think the Soviet Union were the good guys in the Cold War? Absolutely not. In my opinion, it's a period of time where there were no good guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think that it kind of is like he truly had enough respect. It's like, yeah, I'm going to not make the Russians look like idiots. They're going to be kind of good at what they're doing.
Yeah.
And, we get to see this.
Realistic.
They overwhelm our military right away.
Yeah.
I like that too. I like that there's this destruction when they go back a few days later to try to see what happened in town. I kind of like that they walk through this field to destroy tanks and crashed helicopters. And I also like something that the new one didn't do. Passage of time. There's a very good passage of time. Yeah. Like, even though the story is pretty flawed, the passage of time is pretty good. Because a lot of these
separated off into months, which is
and they must have shot a lot of it in reverse order. Because a lot of them, like, they get dirtier, their hair's longer. And when I say dirtier, it's kind of like the Hollywood dirty, where it's like darker colored makeup on their face. But I mean, that's still dirtier than what we see today a lot of times. Yeah. It's not like
dirtier than the remake.
Yeah, it's not like today where like you see Chris Hemsworth crash through several buildings and he's just got like a ripped shirt and a little bit of blood on his face. Right. That being said, I also like there are things about this movie that if it happened in another movie, I wouldn't believe them because it's this movie. It's set up a world. Like it's a stupid premise to how the Soviet Union gets to the point where they invade America, because that even in the Cold War probably would have never happened, because the premise is the Green Party was elected instead of any other party. NATO was dissolved because of that. And the European Union sat out the Cold War because they were pansies essentially.
Except for England.
Except for England.
He predicted Brexit.
Yeah, and then England instantly gets owned, which would be so accurate. We're going to fight too. Hey, look at all those airplanes.
Yeah.
It's the Blitz again. There's and I kind of like that. Yeah, this guy is made up in his mind a way this could happen. And also the invasion through Mexico and like the fact that they like obviously if there was this many civilian transports or planes approaching, even if there's civilian transports, there would have been one guy in a radar like, hey, should we be concerned by the fact there's 57 airplanes coming from Nicaragua? Nope. Okay, I guess we're going to ignore that. Like there would have been things that would have been warning signs.
Yeah.
And it kind of, in my opinion, that's actually one of the things I like to kind of have a better solution to how this happens in the new movie. Yeah. And that's the only good thing about this, the new movie. And I guess I really like the amount of, there's this own little world, I guess, to this movie. It's kind of something like I said I liked about Avatar, where I like that there's a world. Like John Milius could probably tell you, like, if you asked him, hey, what's going on in Texas? He's like, oh, well, they're really fighting hard. Or if you said, hey, what's the Pennsylvania rebellion look like? He's like, oh, they're all like bushwhackers jumping out of the brush and hitting them for transports. He has everything thought out in my mind. Allegedly, there was supposed to be sequels to the original that would take place in different cities, but I think it didn't get enough of a traction audience.
I could also being like a good FX like anthology series actually. Like I was thinking that when I watched it, like if you really wanted to do this world thing, you could have like, you know, a season about them, you know, in Colorado. You could have a season like, you know, what does LA look like when this is happening? What is what New Jersey would look like in the middle of a Red Dawn thing? Oh, New Jersey.
They just nuked New Jersey. We
New Jersey would just we get them all. Our mobsters would protect us. All of our Sopranos would save us.
Right. Pennsylvania would probably mostly be turncoats.
They can have Jersey Shore, okay?
Yeah, you can have. We'll just offer up the situation as like a
we're gonna cut you a deal, okay?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in Pennsylvania, oh yeah, we'll give up everybody else we know.
Sure thing.
Just don't fuck with the Eagles, okay? We still have football? Good. Can we make it the Eagles are the only team left alive? We'll settle for that.
Win.
I want to get your guys' thought. What do you think of his portrayal of the bad guys in this movie?
I think it was, you know, I mean, look, I'm very limited, I think, in my knowledge of you know, these two sides. I think, you know, my history is something that I've always that I will admit I always lack a little bit. Like whenever I'm doing a writing project, I always have to do research on the history of it because I am a little scarce. But I think as a casual moviegoer, as somebody who, you know, doesn't know a lot, I think his portrayal of the enemy was something that it was well executed at what the film intended to do. Like you said, there were some sympathetic villains, which was a good thing. You know, you absolutely want to have that, especially when you're covering a takeover of of a war. You want to have people who are sympathetic on the other side. And then you have your 60s Batman villain for like your main villain, which is like
the heavy.
Right, which I think is good too. You know, you want to kind of run the gamut of having somebody, you know, who's more of a real character, like the guy who lets Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen go at the end, and you want to have somebody who's just an unrepentant asshole at the same time too, because you want to see them get their comeuppance. Like, I think that it found a good blend.
Yeah, I like two of those guys in this that were both the Russians. I also even liked like the minor Russian characters who don't really say. Like, those three guys, I actually kind of like those guys there. I like that one guy, like, oh yeah, this is a Native American arrow. Because I actually found that very relatable of somebody bullshitting their way through something they clearly don't know what they're talking about, but everybody thinks they're an expert on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, no, yeah, they made metal out of rifles and stuff. And they're like, okay, well, why is there plastic? It's bone, but they polish it. They will color. I thought that was good. Then when he's reading, I took a note when they're reading he's like, oh, this is where
and he's reading it
American
wrong.
Cossacks.
Yeah, that was cool. I liked it.
He's probably right though, because most of the land we got out west was because we murdered a bunch of Native Americans to get it.
Yeah,
Like
I mean that was also a good thing. I feel like though, like if you're talking about like a world building, like I've seen, you see pictures of U.S. soldiers all the time doing that in the middle of, other countries that they've been to, right? Like, so I think to have soldiers do that on American soil was kind of sobering, in a way, like kind of like, oh, we're, it's easy to see all these pictures in history books and easy to see all these pictures on like TV and stuff on the History Channel. But you are one of the pictures now. I think
that's where some people make the draw to say this is an anti-war movie, because there is something like you think about, like, oh, that's terrible, they're doing that, and then you have the thought, well, we kind of do that all the time when we're in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and it makes you realize, like, oh, that's kind of not cool. A lot of the stuff they're doing. I also love the opening because it establishes them as bad guys, and they get into it fast. I also like Patrick Swayze's kind of a loser in this movie. Jed's a loser.
Care to elaborate?
Okay. He works at the gas station, and he's still obsessed with his high school football team and hangs out with his brother and a kid in high school still.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about the remake or the original is that, like, you don't really know, and this is something I guess a point that Jacob was trying to make, is that you don't really know too much about any of them before their lives. Like, you don't know really. I mean, Jeb, he hangs out at a gas station. He drives his brother to school and stuff. Like, but you don't really know what he was like who he was before all this.
Yeah, it pulls like
I
a
would
full
still say
where you're just shown these characters.
There's little moments that I like better in this movie than I like at the larger attempts at dialogue in the remake.
Yeah.
Like the girls.
100%.
Something happened to them.
Yes.
I don't really want to know. Yeah. I don't want to know what, but something terrible has clearly happened to them in the course of this history.
Yeah.
And there's,
a little bit, I think, right, because they say that their parents got killed, but other than that.
Yeah. Horrific things happen in any invasion and war. If you want to find out, just read about what the Russians did invading Germany, or what America did in Vietnam or Korea or even the Middle East.
Yeah, or what I think any invading country, whenever somebody invades somebody else, there's always going to be
civilians take the brunt of everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think they got that across pretty well.
Yeah.
Also, like, Daryl, we get his character built pretty well, and we get, like, even though it's pretty cheesy, there's that picture of Daryl and Jed from Little League, and that establishes, it was a really hard decision for them to kill Daryl. And also we have Robert, who starts out at, like, he's the one character who I think has, like, something you could call an arc. He starts out very unwilling to kill anybody, and then is kind of he's willing to die on a stand firing a gun at a helicopter.
Yeah.
It's like, he kind of becomes like a blood psychopath almost. Like,
he's the one who shoots Daryl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, his character exemplifies like how you could see this movie as like an anti-war film, where like it shows these kids like becoming these dehumanized killing machines.
It shows them as terrorists.
The epitome of that.
He's the character that I felt like, if you wanted to make this a real if you wanted to make this a really psychological war movie, like a Full Metal Jacket a little bit more, he would have been the right way to go, because he has a line in this movie. I think he's talking to the pilot, where he goes where he's like carving how many kills he has into his thing, and this is where I think the movie kind of makes a mistake. I don't know if we're there yet, McLean, if we're talking about what we'd want to change about the movie, but
we don't do that till like the very end after.
Okay, so I'll hold my point on that. We'll come back to that, but remind me.
I know the line you're talking about though, where he says, "It's gonna burn you up on the inside." He goes, "Yeah, but it keeps me warm."
Right.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that because, like, that's a psychotic thing. And
I have a specific thing. We'll get to it when we fix it, but remind me.
And also, even I actually like the ending of this movie. Even though I kind of think it would have been a little bit better, maybe if they said, "Oh yeah, and we lost anyway." I say that about both. I say that about this one because that would have been just like a sucker punch ending. It's like, or despite our efforts, America still fell.
That would be huge.
Because only two of them get away, and I do kind of like they turn that into a monument of like, right. And because that's realistic. If there was this huge war that America won,
or if you went like an I Am Legend situation where like, you have, maybe they don't win, but they sort of get to an outer zone area where it's like okay
Canada
for there, but obviously the America at large has been taken over. There's no more. But he could have found a way maybe to,
or maybe like a Man in the High Castle. There's this little section of the country that doesn't get completely invaded.
Right, exactly. Or even a nice way of having your cake and eating it too could have been even that the rest of America gets taken, but their area doesn't because of all their efforts.
And they also, I like the use of implying things, like how one thing they kind of implied is that they actually have it pretty good compared to a lot of the other rebel groups still fighting. Because I remember the pilots talking about, there's groups that are nothing more but scarecrows that are feeding off the dead. Because that's a really realistic thing that happens in wars. The Chechen War, Chechen wars, if you want, or Armenians, or any of those terrible wars in like that Eastern European theater are horrific. Even modern day Ukraine is fairly horrific in some of the stuff that happens. I think they do kind of make war a little horrific, despite at the same time like making it a bit like glory found. It's similar to Starship Troopers. Yeah. How even though guys are getting ripped apart, there's still something a little glorifying about getting ripped apart by the enemy.
Yeah.
So now, what do we like about the remake? Jacob, you have to say one nice thing.
I could say something. I guess I could say something nice about it. I didn't hate. I did not hate the. I think I really like Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character. I wish he was in the movie more.
I agree.
But I like him. I think getting the trait, I think the Daryl thing is a good thing in the remake or in the original. I liked the different take they took with him though, where he is their friend and he is on their side, but ultimately he makes sort of his own sacrifice and is like, look, I've got a tracking device in me. You should just go. I thought that was kind of cool.
I do like to imagine when that scene happens, the Russians drive by. It's just one guy by himself. Let's move on.
Right, probably. And I think I'm trying to think of something else. I did have one other thing. I think the thing about the remake is it's a lot more. Depending on what kind of moviegoer you are, you could make an argument that the remake is sort of it's completely mindless, right? It doesn't really dare to explore any of those questions that the first one really tries to go into.
It felt like the cutscenes to a Call of Duty.
Right. It's a lot. It's very brainless. And I think because it's so brainless, because when I was watching the original Red Dawn, I was thinking about all the things I would have done differently to make this movie really strong. Where when I was watching the remake, my brain was completely turned off.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on what kind of moviegoer you are. Are you somebody who kind of just wants to snap in and just be like, all right, let me just watch Chris Hemsworth kill somebody for a couple hours, like an hour and a half. And I think the other thing I will give it is that I liked that. I mean, we talked about how the passage of time in the original is the stronger way to go. and I agree with that. I think this was an interesting take in the sense that this was kind of almost like the origin story for a war we're never going to really get to see, right? Like this is how it started.
I like to imagine they lost.
They probably did in this.
Yeah, I like to imagine like it's that Mustang driving with the minigun blazing, and then they just get owned.
Yeah, I mean, I did like
just
that.
A bunch of North Koreans. What the hell just happened? They drove a Mustang with a minigun at us.
Right.
Shot through pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think to an extent, like I kind of like that element of it. But yeah, I mean, here, well, I'm gonna let somebody else. What do you think, Jacob?
As far as good things go,
Gotta say one nice thing, Jake.
I have a couple. I actually have a couple. So I think the action scene towards the end, like the second act climax, I guess, where they're like fighting the Korean guys and they're trying to get the box. It's not like a good scene, but I was engaged by it. It was something to I would say I mindlessly got locked into it just because there was a lot happening and it wasn't like unbearable. I actually like the way they killed off Chris Hemsworth's character. It was
me too.
Genuinely shocking. So, yeah.
I'm sorry. Can I cut you off here?
Yeah, go ahead.
He gets domed. He says nothing and just gets shot in the side of the head like 2 sack of potatoes. Yeah. I don't think they would have done that if they knew he would be Thor by the time this movie released.
No, probably not. But,
so I think that's because he was a relatively unknown. I won't say unknown because he was probably in stuff that I haven't heard of before then. But he wasn't Thor yet. Otherwise, he would have got like that, I'll be back, or they would have killed Josh Peck. But he got just like that, and I loved that. That and the annoying guy, the annoying Marine who got shot. I loved how both of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. I like the line where he says something like shit sandwich without the bread.
Yeah.
Genuinely got a laugh out of me.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off. What else? What other nice things do you have?
There was one other thing. Okay, about him getting shot. I like how that scene is like Josh Peck's like arc into becoming like he's like the only character with an arc where like he starts off as this really bratty, privileged, annoying kid, and then he sees his brother die, and that's like the snap. Like you see him progressively becoming.
It takes too long though.
Well, it's not that he takes too long; it's that the writing's fucking awful, and he's so poorly cast, and his acting is just not. But it's mostly like I like
a better actor could have. Do you think a better actor could have made his character better?
Yes, but it wouldn't have made it good. It would have made it better, but you still needed to improve the writing.
Okay, I'm just asking that because I can't decide if he's a bad. I don't know how he got this role either.
He's Josh Peck.
But like, is he big enough? I don't know a lot about him.
I don't know. Maybe he was like trying to. He was like, "Hey, I want to be in an action movie."
I think he's one of those actors where like. I mean, look, it's kind of the same effect as when I saw when you said we were going to do these movies, and I was like, "Oh shit, it's Josh from Drake and Josh." You know, he has a face that like maybe an adult recognize, but
me and you had very different tones because I was like, "Oh shit, it's Josh from Drake and Josh." Like my tone was, "Really, this is the guy they're going to get to be an insurgent later?"
Well, you know what it is too. It's also like for some people, and I was this way as a kid. If you like somebody on one thing, you want to see them in everything else they do. Like I was a big fan of, as a kid, I really liked Chris Pine stuff. So I would just watch everything that Chris Pine was in, good or bad. I think sometimes it would be things that Chris Pine should not have been in.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like that bankable, like, oh, Josh Peck, kids know him. Let's just throw him in there, see what happens.
Yeah. I think like somebody who's maybe, like I said, this was a movie that felt like it was written and made by robots. And I feel like the casting process was kind of like that too. It's like, oh, people are going to know who Josh Peck is. He's in a kid's show. Kids are going to see it.
It's PG-13.
Yeah.
Except the remake or the original feels more like an R-rated film. Like I didn't even know it was PG-13.
Yeah, I thought it was R-rated as well, actually.
Yeah, but the remake is painfully PG-13.
I think that was a wonderful period of time where things that feel R-rated or PG-13 kind of feel R-rated because things that are PG-13 now would have been PG at that time period.
Yeah.
So that's so I'm going to say what I like. I actually kind of like how they do the invasion process. I just don't like the fact that it's North Korea because disabling all of our technology would be the realistic way to invade America. And I kind of like that they have that explanation. I also do like some of the like. I like their explanation for explaining how they would uprise as an insurgency through like these quick hit or run tactics. And that's kind of the end of where I have good things to say. But like their backstory, I think, is kind of like either you played Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah.
I know, like, and they use an EMP in that to explain how like America gets invaded by Russia and that. But and I like that. I like that, like, you see stuff, like, I like some small things in this new one. Like, you see stuff like the North Koreans stole a lot of stuff the paratroopers did. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but all the Humvees had, like, were American Humvees with, like, the communist symbol painted over them. And I think there were some good performances. Like, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I think, was actually fairly decent at it. And like I said, I kind of like they made fun of the deer drinking blood, but I just kind of like the joke they made. I didn't like anything else about that scene. And I like that there's that Chris Hemsworth got killed in a way that not many movies do anymore, or at all ever really, which is somebody just getting boom dead and they've shit themselves. Because apparently that's what you do when you die. Like, I don't know if you guys think of a movie where the person doesn't have like I'm dying, here's my last words, take
any Tarantino movie.
Yeah,
every Tarantino movie, like
okay, but like another war movie or so.
A war movie? Ooh, that's tough actually.
Because even like really good ones still have the moments where there's Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks has his whole moment, and every other guy kind of has a slow death.
I want to say Full Metal Jacket, but there might have been like one or two.
Maybe. Yeah, I was gonna say 1917. He has the moment.
No, but that's the long death where he's like, oh.
Yeah, well, that one. What's so funny about that? That's almost has like. I like that for almost the revert kind of quick side tangent. I like that one almost for the reverse effect where he just got stabbed, so I thought he was gonna make it, but. Then, like, as the more you're getting into the scene, the more pale you see he's becoming. Like, I'm like, oh shit, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like that. Like that's because like you see, it's kind of like that desensitization.
Yeah. Also, I forgot about this in the new one. I also like the scene where the one chick hides under the truck and then just gets crushed by it. Because I kind of like how horrific that one moment is. Because that would be fairly horrific when they're hiding from the mortar fire.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's a fairly,
I couldn't even pay, like, when that scene happened, I literally, like, zoned out. I was like, I can't even tell what is happening right now because the camera work and the editing, we'll get to that. Ugh.
Yeah. Now, I think we covered as much positive as we can for the new movie. Although I do want to say, who do you think was the best actor in this movie? Besides Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Oh, besides Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Oh man, that's fucking hard.
Actually, I thought the dad was pretty good too.
The dad was good.
Is it just me, or is that dad the same guy in every movie where he's like the dad or president or somebody in like I don't know his name, but he's like always a leader figure in like 17,000 different movies.
Yeah, I've seen him before. I don't even know though.
I have to say, though, I also kind of like that Jed's a different kind of loser in this movie, where he's like a Marine no one cares about. Unfortunately, that's where I feel like he's like, you want to drink beers? No, fuck off. So, yeah, where he's like just sitting in his truck like a psychopath, staring into the distance. Like, I kind of like if they had actually dug in, something's broken about this guy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, how frequently do you see someone drinking beers endlessly on their front porch and just staring to the distance without thinking, oh, that person's broken on the inside? Or his dad's like, oh, sorry, we don't have a room for you, so I guess you just got to sleep on the couch. Like, I kind of like that essentially his character's kind of treated like shit for the first part of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what don't we like about 1984?
Okay.
Ed, open up.
Go ahead.
So I've had like I was like holding up that one thing, but it kind of goes back to what we were saying once again, kind of like what we were saying, like how when the action gets going. Have you both seen the first Men in Black?
Yes.
Okay, that movie I always like equate to. Basically, it's like making the film 101, right? You start in the middle of the action, but even though you're starting in the middle of the action, you're constantly getting good and natural exposition about how the world of Men in Black works.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time you're finished, you have an idea of like, okay, it's this alien thing. It's this alien organization that polices and monitors alien activity. This is how it works. This is like the weird quirks of the world. This is how they operate, stuff like that. I think in this movie, it does it right by getting right to the action. But the thing is, a lot of the exposition that they try to throw at you is so layered in like a sort of political bias that like a sort of this conservative mindset that it becomes harder to digest. And I think, and I'm usually the same way actually as like what you were saying, Jacob, where it's like, I don't really mind what your politics are as long as you give me a good story. I think in this one, it's a little too, it's just a little too much. Like there's a little bit too much of this, of the director's like views kind of layered into the story that it sort of dilutes some of the things. And that one line we were talking about before when I said like, that when the kid's like, he's carving the notches of kills into his gun. And he says, and McClane, you quoted the line where he's like, all that hate's going to burn you. And he goes, yeah, but it keeps me warm. If it was written in a different way, the whole movie, that could have been a really disturbingly good line.
And if it was delivered differently too, I think that like, instead of he's like, yeah, but it keeps me warm. If he's like, yeah, it keeps me warm. If he just was really dead-faced and deadpan about it.
That, and also he says that line, the guy starts walking away and then they cut away. They needed a shot of like the guy like realizing like, holy shit, like
this kid's
visually, like his face like going, oh, you're fucking crazy.
Right. And I think
like walking away.
I can't remember what it was, but I read I read an article and saw a documentary about child soldiers in Africa that had been like and they said that there is fundamentally something always broken about these people.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell that like all these kids are like psychologically fucked up. The problem is that the director doesn't treat them that way.
No, and Jake, I told you like usually. So last week on the Ghostbusters, I don't know if either of you saw the Ghostbusters episode, but I talked about how some people try to dig in the politics and make it like a right-wing talking point, Ghostbusters, or make it like or try to pick apart the original one because they think it's a right-wing talking point, and it's not. Like, that's people looking for politics.
Yeah.
My problem with this one is this is somebody using a story to deliver his politics, not somebody using his politics to deliver a story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like, Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood.
I think he was trying to tell a story, though. I don't know. I agree with that somewhat.
Clint Eastwood has politics I don't like, but has movies I do. Yeah. American Sniper is a pretty good movie, and I actually always kind of interpret it as an anti-war movie.
Yes.
Because I think you can very much interpret either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that movie, the strength of that movie is like, I don't think that movie particularly necessarily over glorifies what Chris Kyle did, right? Like, I think it just kind of like, particularly the way I think Bradley Cooper performs him. He says like, this is just this guy. This is what he did out in the field. This is what he believed, but there's no like agenda with the film. Like, I think the thing about Red Dawn is even when there isn't an agenda, sometimes it feels like there's sort of an agenda. And I think that agenda kind of muddies the water a little bit in terms of what you can do with those characters, because you have to make them righteous to kind of push that ideology, instead of kind of showing off that there's a lot of layers. And that's not always true in the film. Like, when they kill Daryl, like, that's where you kind of get like this is the effect that this is having on these kids.
Supposedly, sorry to cut you off. Supposedly, the writer of this movie had to fight really hard to keep that one scene in, because apparently John Milius wanted to take it out and have that character be killed by a Russian instead. Apparently, there's a lot of contention between some of the more liberal members of the people who made this movie and John Milius. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry to cut you off there, but
Yeah, well, I was gonna say. I mean, I was gonna say that like I think it more has to do with the writing than his agenda. But I mean, if what you just said is true, then maybe not. But yeah, I think my biggest issue with the film is like just the way that he goes about showing you who all these characters are. Like I really didn't care about any of them or know any of them or what they actually like wanted in life or anything. Like you just don't know much about them. Like literally, the scene opens with Charlie Sheen and Patrick Swayze. They're in the truck. They're like, "Hey, you play football? Hey, I play football." And then they go to class, and then the Russians kill people, and it's like there's like nothing.
Well, and that's kind of something that I like about the concept of the new one. I don't like how they did it in the new one, but like, yeah, there was 10 minutes in the beginning. It's like, oh, you see these brothers, their dad's like, oh, I made you boys breakfast. Now go out there. Or if he's kind of a hard ass, like he's like, fuck off or whatever. All right, and you got to see.
Just give me some character. There were the film even like tries to stay away from like close-ups or like intimate moments.
Starship Troopers did a better job at giving you ideas.
100%. Yeah. Like. Well, yeah, because they give the characters dynamics and like you can tell, oh, he wants to join the military because he wants the girl. In this movie, it's like he wants to avenge his dad because his dad told him to. But I don't give a shit about his dad, so why would I give a shit about him?
Because I told you to.
There's this version of this movie where they hated their father. They're like, we're joining the Russians now. It's like, I was a fan of communism, but they killed dad, so I'm actually kind of on board.
Also, something else, there are a lot of really great dramatic scenes that just aren't backed up with tension beforehand. Like the scene when he kills the kid with the tracker, Daryl, right?
Yeah.
The scene where he kills Daryl. If they had shown Daryl like getting captured, that would imagine how intense the rest of that engagement would be before that scene goes down, and imagine how it would build up to that scene. Like that's how you handle it, not just he had a tracker put in a scene that we didn't see.
Even,
like
showing that scene also might make us feel more sorry for him.
Yes, yeah.
It showed us what they put him through. Like it would have kind of made the conflict of should we kill him even worse, and it would further highlight particularly Robert's, like how far Robert is falling into that hole of just being murder happy.
I want to talk about something else I don't like, and this is, again, just my beliefs. There's a bit of a creepy relationship between, I think it's Erica and the pilot. And apparently there's a cut of this movie where that relationship is apparently consummated.
Oh. And
they had test audiences, or not even test audience. I think it went to Studio Access. They're like, hey, John, what the fuck, dude? This is a high school student, and he's 40. You can't do this.
I don't know why they included that.
What is with Hollywood's obsession to have 40-year-old men be with 16-year-olds?
Projection.
Because it's like that in American Beauty. I'm like, why are these good? What? No, I hate American Beauty. If I'm thinking the right movie with
Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, I hate that movie. Like I really do. It has it's shitty. Every character in it's a piece of shit. And Kevin Spacey's nothing. I don't like Kevin Spacey's in that. Even before we kind of knew everything about him, I don't like him.
I mean, I think in the cut they went with, it's weird. And it's weird, and it's kind of like goes. But I didn't think it was like squicky. I'm glad that the cut they didn't go with, they ultimately chose not to go with, because that sounds squeaky.
I just imagine, John Mills like, so the pilot, how old's the pilot? Is he like 20 or something? No, he's 40. No, we're not doing that. Like, I like the idea of some producer looking at John Mills. You can't do that. No, that's stupid. Yeah. Or like some test audience in like Las Vegas, like, yeah, like we're all on board for the killing commies and shit, but what the fuck was with the pilot sleeping with the kid?
Yeah.
Yeah,
don't know about that.
I also kind of don't like, and even though I said this is something I like about the movie, at the same time, even though they do kind of humanize just the one Nicaraguan, a lot of the other guys are just faceless monsters to be killed off, like the Spetsnaz guy they capture.
Yeah, I would have liked something more from him.
Imagine how different that would be if that guy was pleading for his life, and they kind of tried to do that at the end where he's like, you can't do this, Geneva Convention. And he keeps saying Geneva Convention over and over, and I think that's what they're trying to apply. But like, what if like that was a scene where this guy's like, I have a family, I don't want to die. I promise, I won't tell anybody. Just let me go, please. And they just, if that Russian character had more. There's also a funny moment where they're capturing or deciding what to do with him and Daryl. And the one girl's, "To spreche Deutsch," and the one guy says, "You don't speak German. It doesn't matter." I think it's Robert who yells that at her, but funny. I kind of like that he says that, like, because she's trying to communicate with him. He's like, "You don't speak any of that. It doesn't matter." I kind of like moments like that in movies where someone's just like, "No, you're a fucking idiot."
Yeah. I mean, I think also like, you have those moments like out of character, or like just like it's in character, but it's like, oh, this guy's just an idiot. Like, that's it. And then you can have that for the audience too. It's like a moment where like you can get on a character and the audience can get on the same wavelength, kind of, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Oh, something I actually liked about the original relative to the remake is that a lot of the interactions or the humor, I should say, is very like tasteful. Like I think one of the most human moments in the film is when after they get the food, Patrick Swayze's just eating and the girl's like dripping orange juice on him. And he just looks up. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" I don't know. I thought they were like nice moments.
Oh yeah, it's it's classier, I think, than some of the things
compared to the remake, which is just like
yeah.
Hey, you guys, we all love playing Call of Duty out here. We really miss playing Call of Duty. Yeah. I want to talk about that scene.
No, we'll get to that, but I want to finish up talking about things I don't like. I kind of don't like. I I'll mean this. I don't like that we really don't get to know these kids at all.
Yeah.
Because
that's the
only
issue.
Two people that survive are the people we know the least about.
I didn't even know the one guy who survived.
Danny?
I didn't even know. Yeah, what? Where was he for the rest of the film? I forgot that he existed. I was like, I think he was always guy.
He was the guy, but like, and then there's the Hispanic kid who I didn't even realize the first time I watched this movie got killed off. I think he was not Robert.
Because Robert is
in the tank
I don't
scene?
even remember his name.
I actually thought it would have been interesting if Robert lived. Like, if he somehow found a way out of that, he either found a way out of that bloodlust or it, like, consumed him to the point where...
Well, that would be good if, like, he was the three of them and, like, he's like, "You guys go, I'm going to stay here. I like doing this too much."
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's basically what he does. He's like, I'm going to go I'm going to sacrifice myself to kill the Russians.
I kind of don't like that scene where the helicopters come after them and then they're like, "We'll say it was 12." Because I would like the anger of the Russian officer saying, "We only got 2." This is like, I would like that to be a scene like where maybe we get to see some of the Russians start breaking, where it's like, "Why are we here? Why the fuck are we here?" Like yelling at that colonel. Like, I don't get it. I want to go home. This is a tough war. Like, and the way they make it seem like the Russians enjoy being there a little too much.
Yeah.
But it's something about, like, if you had, like, some of the Russians, kind of like American troops today feel sometimes about being overseas, where it's like, I want to go home. This is terrible. We're losing guys. I saw my best friend get his head shot by a fucking 16-year-old kid. We're done. I don't want to be here anymore. And I think that would have been a good moment to have maybe somebody freak out, like, at their officer or something.
Right.
And I also but I don't like how a lot of the deaths can kind of be brushed over, because the pilot's death is really the only one that I, like, remember very well.
Yeah. And the one kid who shoots the helicopter.
Yeah. And because the other kid, like the Latino kid, I kind of liked his inclusion that he was able to blend in with the Nicaraguans when they liberated the camp. But there's a moment where, I realized, he died after the tank battle scene.
Yeah, he died in the tank. But
I didn't realize that the first time I watched this movie, until like way later on in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I knew something about Danny, or they made him like maybe a bit more of a character.
They needed to flesh out all of the characters. I think that's the biggest issue with the film.
Yeah, and also can I say, I don't know if this is me digging in, but it's a little weird. The one black guy in this movie gets shot within like 30 seconds. Instantly. Yeah. One like solidly easy to distinguish person of color in this movie is instantly murdered by the Russians. Yeah. So I guess we need to move on to the better movie.
Didn't know it was opposite day.
I'm gonna let you go first on this one because I think you've been holding
What don't we like about this movie, Jacob?
Editing, cinematography, directing, casting. These are basic fucking writing. These are basic fucking
the
things
movie,
to get
you
right
don't
in
like
your
the movie. I get it.
And I don't even know where to begin. Okay,
I want to bring something up about the editing. I think there was a lot more to this movie, but they had to cut it out because of the whole China thing.
I'm sure the editor is like a good editor, and he was just like, "What the fuck am I supposed to do with this?"
I don't know.
Honestly, I believe that the coverage was bad because there were so many times where they break the fucking 180, and I have no idea what's going on, and there's just like there's a cut like every millisecond. Like the opening action scene, I literally felt nauseous. Like I couldn't. The shaky cam, the cutting, the breaking the 180, like it was too much. I couldn't handle it. And it's that way for like the entire film. Like there's not a single tripod shot in the entire movie.
Yeah, you're right about that.
There's not a moment to breathe. Like it's just it's overwhelming and it's not well shot.
I believe there's this kind of weird domino effect with some movies where the writing's good, so then the directing's good, and the cinematography's good, and the action's good, the music's good, the acting's good.
Yeah.
This is a case where it happens. The writing was bad. That directing was bad. The action was bad. The camera work was bad. The acting was bad. The casting.
For a movie to work, everybody kind of has to be on the same page.
Yeah.
So you get bad movies when not everybody's on the same page, or everybody is on the same page and they're just all united by this bad idea. You know, like that. I think there's a lot of, but more often than not, I would say it's the first one. Like, I think the second one you see a little bit more when you get to like sequels and stuff. But I think the interesting thing about this one is that like it tries to update this story.
Yeah, and this is a story that only works for 1984.
Right. It's a story that really, doesn't really need, like, I don't think anybody was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, you know, because I don't know too much about these movies. I don't think anybody was, like clamoring for, like, a Red Dawn remake. I never was, like, there's a lot of things to remake out there. I don't know if Red Dawn was ever the one that I was like, yeah, let's make that one again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta mention the scene, or I should just talk about the writing in general. So, the way they write dialogue, there's so many like lines of dialogue in this movie that are like generic cliche line I've heard in a billion other movies. Like his voiceover during the monologue is like,
"Are we gonna talk about
evolve? We have to adapt," and it's just like, come on.
And like, note how like hesitant they were to call themselves terrorists. Because we still live in this like post 9/11 world where like you can't really bash the U.S. Army. We said overseas we're the good guys. Now we have to be bad guys. Like say we have to be terrorists now. Say it. I dare you won't. Say it. God damn it. Say you're gonna be terrorists.
They won't say it because Hollywood likes money. There's also just like whenever they try to so something that the original doesn't do well is develop the characters. In this movie they tried to develop the characters, and they failed. I hated every single.
All the characters were cliches.
Praying that they would fucking die. The Josh Peck and his girlfriend. The scene where they're like, "Oh, you remember Call of Duty?" And then the one black guy's like,
"Can we talk about that scene? Can we talk about that?"
Yes. The one black guy who's like, "Oh my god, man, I really miss biddies."
So the new Daryl and the new
not
Danny.
You biddies, because you biddies got guns. I miss like real biddies, and the women are just like, "Oh."
I like how he says, "You guys aren't like hot. I'm talking about sexy." Like, oh, the two supermodels aren't hot.
It's like what? How? I think I paused the movie when that scene happened, and I said to myself, I was like, if I was a writer, and
we also need to talk about what happened before that
made
scene.
It to final cut, I would probably kill myself. Like.
I'm pretty sure it's like, hey, you made that movie? Yep. We should preface it. Jake, explain what happened. The scene before we have this reflecting on what we're doing scene when they're talking about what they miss. What happened moments before involving Daryl and Robert? Eat fresh.
What?
Oh, the
Fresh. The subway.
And
Worst product placement in all of
that
them.
scene was abysmal. Oh my god, no wonder I blocked it out of my fucking memory. Holy shit.
This is like when I'm sorry, but
guns. He's pointing his gun at the guy behind the counter. He's like, "Put the shit in the sandwich." He's like, "Dude, it's your it's your local Subway guy. Like, he's on your side. Why are you aiming your gun at him?"
Also, I kind of feel
what
like it's
happened
not
to the
that
Koreans who were chasing you? It's like,
Also, I feel like it's not that bad being in the Korean because clearly everything's operating normal. That's a full Subway.
yeah, right.
If anything, business is booming. It would be funnier if they ran in there as just a Subway filled with Korean officers eating.
Yeah, and then they run out. The CCR song just starts playing.
Yeah, no, it's Korean's
God.
Clearwater, and it's what's it, up around that
Up around the bend. Yeah. Oh
yeah,
my God.
I like Creedence Clearwater.
It's so out of place though. It's so out of place.
it doesn't work. Yeah.
That's a song that's playing while your riverboat is being shot at.
Yeah.
Not while you're running with a bucket full of soda and shitty Subway sandwiches. And then they're eating the Subway sandwiches.
Or how about the part where Chris Hemsworth, he walks out, he's like, "Oh, the Koreans are coming." And then he's like, "Oh, never mind, we're good." And then they just shoot at him. And it's like, "Oh, I thought they captured you." And it's like 15 seconds passed. How would he have been captured?
So I want to talk about the things this movie doesn't understand. This movie doesn't understand how to be philosophical.
I don't care about that. The movie was
pro-war.
I agree with Ed. It's fine.
It doesn't understand tactics. It doesn't understand military. It doesn't understand their enemy. Also, something funny. The first draft, apparently, it was the Taliban takes over America.
Yeah, that's what I read too.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad that's not. That would have been.
That would have made no sense.
That would have been an insanely offensive movie.
There's a horrible, the worst comic book I've ever read. It's called Holy Terror, and that's the plot of that comic. And I can confirm it is the worst thing I have ever read. It makes no sense, and that's exactly the plot which you guys just described. So glad we never got a Holy Terror live action.
It sounds like a PureFlix film.
Oh yeah, they did the God's Not Dead movies, right?
Yeah, they also did this attempt at an Antifa takes over movie. It was a pro-gun PureFlix movie. I don't know what it's called, but it apparently is it's just abysmal beyond abysmal. Should we do PureFlix movies for this podcast? Something.
I know you want to be on to that one.
Jake, I'm just gonna get a van and some people snag you and tie in a chair and make you watch Clockwork Orange style.
Oh my god.
Yeah, seriously. This new one though, so they don't understand tactics. Where, like I said, at least in the first one, they understood military tactics. Because the first ambush they do in this, where they have them pop out of the foxholes, it made sense that they would have the time to set that up in the first one, because they're in the middle of the desert and at nighttime nobody's. How they have the time to dig really deep foxholes in the middle of the city?
Also, yeah, we're talking about location, how in the original they did a suburban or a rural town, and in this it's the suburbs. It's the location.
It's Spokane, Washington is where it's set, even though it's pretty much completely shot in Detroit.
Yeah. Oh, something else, the progression of the movie is wrong. Their first killing scene is the trap scene. You don't even see the development. They show a montage of them learning to shoot at trees, and then they're killing Koreans, and then they have the deer scene, which doesn't make any sense. The deer happened. I was like, why is this scene happening now? And then they made it a joke.
And they try to make it Robert didn't kill anybody in that scene, so. Also, this is something that really bothered me. In the first one, she runs past them and lies down behind them to avoid getting shot. This one, she's under them as they're firing Tony. Also, why the fuck is Erica in this one so important to the Koreans that she had to be captured?
Yeah, and what about that scene where they're about to kill the guy, and then she's the one bus with her on it in the entire world is there driving past, and Josh Peck just so happens to see her through any one of those windows. It's how convenient.
Also,
Jacob, their love is so powerful.
I do like the one moment when Commander Cho is holding up their like very cartoon looking bomb. Like they couldn't have made a better looking bomb. Like it had an actual. It looked like they brought it at the like Wile E. Coyote purchased it at Acme, and it
That
was
is
gonna
something
kill.
a compliment I can give, I guess, to the original Red Dawn is like, not only did they build everything and it looks great, but like all the stuff. Like when she said, like when I think it's Tony that dies in the original one.
Yeah.
When she's like, "Hey, pull the pin out of the grenade," I'm like, "Oh, she's fucking holding a grenade." Like, fuck, like And I think in this one, it's to your point, like the bombs and all that. It's like, oh, that's a. I think I saw that in Spy vs. Spy once. Like like
the skateboard bomb.
Yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. Before I get that, I like that. Like Commander Cho's like, yeah, I'm holding this alarm clock. This is like a fake ass alarm clock bomb. You guys said it was pretty easy to find. It was going. And had a large alarm bell, so we got it really quickly. And they undo every moment of like doing something. They undo it where they show that where the bombs are gonna go off is Daryl's dad is there, who kind of looks like Steve Harvey with his mustache.
He does.
But seriously, it's like that would have been like, oh shit, you're gonna have to kill your own dad because he's working with the enemy. But they don't do that. In fact, as far as we're concerned, he lives on happily.
Yeah.
To be the collaborator. The collaborators, that also annoyed the shit out of me. That the one guy, the bad guy, the bad American, Pete, who steals all their food.
Oh, yeah. Like that scene where he leaves.
It's the Wolverines!
Not even that scene. The scene when he has like the fight with Chris Hemsworth, and Hemsworth is like, give me your gun. And he's like, no. And then he takes the gun and he's like, fuck you, I'm leaving. Like, that's enough. Like, you're going to betray all of your friends, the people who just saved your life from the Koreans because you didn't get your gun.
Now, I want to say, I would probably be a traitor in this world. Because I'd be like, oh, they have more guns. Hey, you guys want to know the names of a bunch of people who would be a problem to you?
Sure, yeah,
I'd be like making up people. Like, yeah, this guy owes me $10. He's clearly he's going to be a problem.
I will say also them having it's kind of a weird thing, but them having a house to go to was something that, like, when they escaped the first time, like, to stay in a house, I was like, that sort of almost takes away from, like, the desperation a little bit. Like,
the first one, it was a really desperate situation where they had, like, some sleeping bags, some jackets.
Like that house was so nice. It's like, I'll chill in that house till the end of the World War III. I'll hang out there. Like, that's not so bad. Like,
it gets burned down eventually by the Humvee with the flamethrower.
Right, but it's it's like, and honestly, in a way, it's a good thing and a bad thing because it's like, you see that house, you see them stay in that house, and it's like, oh, okay, so this will all just blow over, and then the real desperation comes when the house is gone. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. That
also, why do the Koreans wait till it's clear the middle of the day to start invading? And also, where's the one anti-air missile in Spokane, Washington?
Yeah, like, how did that plane get shot out of the
sky? I guess it's like the one National Guard anti-air missile is like, we finally get to do our job. We're all out? Shit.
20 years for this day.
I've waited. I got this on eBay, and everybody said I was a lunatic, and now I'm going to do my job. Okay, cool. You got it? Yeah, that was the last one I had. What? But and like the plane, propeller crashing right next to Josh Peck's house and not killing him and Chris Hemsworth is so stupid.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of that car chase? Because I want to say I actually kind of like the concept of like, okay, it's an urban, you're hauling ass through a suburban neighborhood. But
you mean the opening chase?
Yeah. But at the same time, it's annoying.
I couldn't even follow what was happening. And it was all because the editing and directing was just abysmal.
Yeah. Well.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, so like they tried to do the first one where like they're jumping in the back.
Breaking up.
Oh. Hold on.
Oh, good.
Okay, so they tried to do like the first one where they're all jumping in the back of the truck and trying to get away, which I like because that was kind of a cool thing about the first one. It's like, oh yeah, you're like really on the run because like they just barely get away from the Russians as they're parachuting in. but in this one, like, they're jumping in the back. I do like they get T-boned, and the one dude goes through the windshield, and I assume he's dead, and it's the North Koreans. Doesn't kill them, though. It just disables their Humvee. So that was, like, a great thing. Also, the Humvees are all going way too fast. And like I said, usually I don't care about things like accuracy, but, like, no Humvee or even Dodge truck goes that fast. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was when they are using old cars all throughout the chase scene, which makes me realize they probably didn't have that great of a budget for this scene.
Yeah, it did feel very cheap, that chase scene. There was, like, something weird where, like, it seemed like they were hiding how cheap and fake it was by, like, just shaking the camera.
Yeah.
And it also seems like they used a lot of old or cheap cars. Because think, like, the car that Pete has is like an 80s Cadillac or something like that. It's an old car.
Even like the smashing into the the smashing into the houses and stuff. It's like, all right, that's fun, I guess. But A, we can't see it, and B, why don't we just not? Like, like it's like, like, find another way.
Well, that's like kind of like there's something tranquil about watching all the Russians in the original parachuting almost peacefully down and then gathering and approaching before the
there's no music. It's all very low key. And then
whereas the first one's like there's just explosions everywhere, jet planes.
First, the original, it's like you were saying, it's almost tranquil. And it's very organized. The remake is very chaotic in how it handles that. Mm-hmm. It's almost like, but I think that again, it kind of comes from I think because of, like, it's like sort of like almost like a post 9/11 sense of chaos, where it's like, all these things are like rushing right in.
Also,
really fast, and like there's a lot of disorganization, and like it's interesting. Like,
because it's post 9/11, you can't make the military look incompetent, so it has to show them making, like, their last stand as the invasion's happening. Mm-hmm. Like I said, the one thing I do like is, like, an EMP would fuck us up, but they never explain that any further.
Right.
And also I hated the one Marine who they have later on. Dude is like motard.
Oh yeah,
and you know what I hated?
Marines don't talk like that, right?
Yeah,
like they're very disciplined.
He's what a Marine friend of mine would refer to as boot, which is like the most basic. It's like saying someone's a basic bitch. Uh-huh. So you get called, like, him and Chris Hemsworth are what they would call boot ass Marines, where they're just like the most, like, stereotypical as you would see on movie type guys that, like, everybody would hate.
It's a shame because he's in Daredevil. And he's great in Daredevil, but
is he Bullseye? I feel like that guy would be Bullseye. I haven't seen the Daredevil TV show.
Like he's like in the context of the show, he's the guy who makes the suit, and he's like not mentally challenged, but he's like
not all there.
Yeah, he's not all there, and he's very supportive, but, like, he's very troubled. Like, he's a really good character, and the actor does a really good job in the role. Yeah. And then I sat here and I was like, wow, that's oof.
But, like, the fact he uses the word motard, because they obviously couldn't use retard because it was a PG-13 movie.
Right.
I had to look up what motard was. Do you want to know what a motard is? It is a French motorcyclist. It's slang for French motorcyclist hooligans. So it's a meaningless insult.
Yeah, I think it's just because people have a like a preset idea of what
Marines are.
Would be. Yeah, like.
Jake, you still with us?
Yeah. Did I freeze?
You did for a moment.
Yeah, you guys were kind of glitching out. I didn't know if I was gonna lose connection.
Yeah, and also just like the minigun on the Mustang.
Oh yeah, that was delightful.
I could tell you right now, you
and
couldn't
the skateboard
do that.
bomb. That was my favorite.
Oh, we didn't talk about it. I cut you off because I wanted to finish talking about something. But yeah, the skateboard bomb. Like, C4 is a really sensitive explosive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it bumps into stuff and blows up. Like, that's why when the army guys are carrying it, they keep it in, like, this sealed package container usually. Mm-hmm. Because if it gets shot, it will blow up. And they're just having on the bottom of a skateboard, and they, like, send it into a bunker, which I imagine if that was me, that would have gone where I step on it, it goes into my nuts and blows up and kills me.
Mm.
But yeah, the skateboard bomb. God.
It was just so cheesy.
Let's all quickly say what was the worst moment of this movie for each of us.
It was that scene when they were talking about the things that they missed.
I missed Call of Duty, bro.
That was at
Call of Duty,
the worst scene and my favorite, just because I was dying.
For me, it was the deer hunting scene, just because. I don't know. It was the worst scene.
Worst moment. Oh man. There's a lot of bad moments in the. I think it almost. Oh no! You know which one's pretty bad? The opening bar scene.
Oh my god! I blocked that out. Right.
That whole sequence is just kind of bad.
Yeah. And then the car scene afterwards, where it's like, why didn't you tell me your brother was back in town?
Yeah, that's an example of
for those who are just listening. Ed just moved his eyebrows up
that was wrong with the original.
Yeah, and what's her name? Who's also in the Orville? Her character was so fucking cringy in that scene.
Oh, I know. I think it's funny because I actually there's that scene where they're by the lake or whatever. Her and Chris Hemsworth.
I hated that too.
Yeah,
Any attempt at
could have been okay.
To me, something nice about the original was everybody pretty much stayed single throughout the movie.
Yeah, I thought that
there was no romantic subplot.
Besides that weird 40-year-old one, it was.
Yeah, but even that's kind of you have to. Like I said, if it wasn't, I don't think anybody would have really talked about if it wasn't for the fact I brought up that thing I found about that relationship, which apparently, by the way, that's why the actress took that role because she wanted to. And I looked her up, and she's the mom from Back to the Future. So all of her, and she's also in Howard the Duck. So all of the movies are about her having really questionable sexual feelings towards people. Yeah.
Or a duck.
Yeah.
You guys,
that's the mom from Back to the Future. I don't know if you realized that at all.
You guys haven't seen either of you haven't seen Howard the Duck, have you?
No, nope. I never plan on it.
Don't.
You know how yeah, no, I don't. I couldn't do that because it's supposedly terrible, right?
Don't make the same mistake I did, kids. Don't see the film because you think you're some hot shit film student who can take any bad movie. Just save your sanity.
Yeah, what was the so I guess now let's get down to the meat of it. Oh, by the way, were this movie's version of Tony and this movie's version of Robert related? Because they make it sound like both it was their parents who got killed, but I couldn't figure it.
I don't think so.
No, because they either they were related or it's she said she's the one who says his parents got killed. But in the original movie, Robert's parents got killed because his parents were the ones that owned the gun store.
No, I think just and Eric are related. I think that's it.
Yeah. Anyway, besides the point, I hate this movie. Which movie is better? Which one wins the SmackDown? I say completely sarcastically. Jake, let's start with you.
Well, it would be very hard for me to justify anything in the remake, whereas I can see some positive qualities. I can see a good movie buried somewhere in the original. It just needed more space to grow and develop the character. So I'll have to go with the original.
Yeah, the original. I give the original 7 broken AK-47s out of 10. Ed?
Honestly, I'm a little conflicted just because I sort of have the opposite thing of Jacob where you're kind of giving it credit for being a movie buried under. I almost get more frustrated because I can't a movie that could be buried under there. So I don't know. I think it depends. I would say if I had to say objectively which is the stronger film, I would say the original. Easy. There's a lot more to like about it. There's a lot more to appreciate due to in terms of technicals, in terms of potential, in terms of scenes even. With that said, if you're looking for something mindless, the remake is way more mindless. Like, you don't get bogged down in like the morality of the remake. You just watch people like get, blown up and do all this stuff. So I would say, asking like which one's probably the better film, probably the original.
I give the remake one supermodel holding a AK-47 out of 10, out of 100, because it's that terrible.
That you don't find attractive.
Yeah, that scene pissed me off. He's like, no, I'm talking about hot chicks, not you guys. Like, is he blind? Like, objectively, they're attractive people. Like, you can't cut it any other way.
Yeah.
It's just a weird scene, weirdly written.
Yeah, okay. So, how would you make a Red Dawn movie in the 21st century? Because I'm not going to do – I tried it last time with a remake. How do you make each movie better, and that kind of didn't work out. I'm only doing that for different movies, I decide. But how would you make a Red Dawn in the 21st century?
I would make it more in the vein of like what we've been talking about, where it's not necessarily about the invasion, about the cause, so much as it's about what's happening to the characters and what it's making them become.
Yeah.
I would cross it with like I would do a Red Dawn movie in the vein of something like Walking Dead, where you watch people slowly slip and lose their minds.
Mm-hmm.
Where they become these hardened like machines of war. Like, I think that would be very interesting. But I would do it in a way that doesn't really glorify or demonize it. I would just like do it in a way that shows the effects and consequences.
Yeah. I think adapting it as like a miniseries or a TV show is definitely a better approach in this day and age. Also, I like the idea of like doing an alternate history as opposed to like, I don't know, Korea or China invades us. I think going back and saying like there's an alternate history like Man of the High Castle, where it's like an alternate history where the Soviets won the Cold War and then invaded us. Yeah. And there's this guerrilla force that has to fight back. Like I think that'd be a better approach than like Korea invaded us.
Or, even make it about an American Civil War.
I don't know. That would be challenging, especially with today's politics.
I think today's politics would be all the more reasons to do it, honestly.
But I think I don't think it's
like you can finagle a story. Maybe like something happens that makes like the government more radical or something. But like it's a movie about guerrilla warfare. Or if you want to make a movie about guerrilla warfare, make a movie about the North Viet Cong. You don't necessarily have to make it. But honestly, I think if I were to do it, like I have the resources, I would do a mini series instead of a movie. Mm-hmm. And I would do it that it's an alternate timeline, like you said, and maybe have it be a year or so into the war. And, maybe the first episode shows how it started, and then everything after that's like a few years into the war.
Yeah, I mean, even I think the idea of like doing it a la Man in the High Castle isn't a bad idea as well. Like, I mean,
yeah, have a sympathizer character, because I mean,
like, sorry, what were you saying?
So I'd maybe find something sympathetic about a character who's like, yeah, our country sucked beforehand, so what was so good about it? People were still poor and broke and hungry.
I've only seen a couple episodes of that show, but the one thing it is good at is it's showing all walks of life. Like, what is it like for Nazi commandants now that America is a Nazi-occupied place? Or like, what's it like for a person who is Jewish or secretly Jewish rather? What's it like for people on the West Coast, since Japan has kind of taken over? Like it gives you all these different walks of life because America is such a big country. And I think seeing that in Red Dawn would be really cool. Like you could imagine, I think it would be cool to see how you have a place that's more Soviet occupied and what the culture is like there. And then, or you have a place that's more like, maybe like more Chinese occupied.
Or like Free America and stuff like that. Exactly. I would like to see characters like maybe have this dude who was like at one point a U.S. Army Ranger, but now he's like the head of the people hunting these like rebels in his town.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, it's a hard thing to do in the 21st century because as America, like nobody's really gunning to invade us. So yeah, it's hard to kind of think of what would be the modern equivalent of doing this, because really everything else is kind of stupid.
Canada invading us.
Yeah, Yeah, I do want to talk about before we end here the pop culture influences and the cultural influence of Red Dawn because I end up finding a lot. Video games, as far as video games
Okay.
go, Homeland, the Homefront video games were inspired by this, and so was a mission in Modern Warfare 2 called Wolverines.
Hmm.
It was inspired by the plot of Red Dawn. Also, the mission to kill Osama bin Laden was called I think it was called Operation. I want to say Red Dawn, and I think they referred to each helicopter as Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2.
I think even like just playing a little bit of like Wolfenstein. Like sometimes I get sort of a Red Dawn vibe where not necessarily obviously because it's about Nazis as opposed to uh, the Soviet Union. I think like you get sort of that guerrilla warfare idea when you're like sneaking into places in Wolfenstein. So I think that's kind of interesting too.
Yeah, and I think also it is. I feel like it's inspired a lot of apocalyptic movies too.
Oh, for sure.
And I also feel like in a way it's maybe inspired something like The Man in a High Castle, where it's like, well, what does the country like? What does a resistance in a occupied country look
Oh yeah,
like?
I'm sure.
The book The Man in the High
Yeah, I'm sure
Castle
it's
was
had a
written
huge
beforehand.
impact on like alternate history.
Yeah. Yeah, and also just this like I said, it's a military. Some military units like will yell shit like Wolverines. Apparently, is something I heard. Um, yeah, I mean, so it's a funny thing to think about as we this was an influence. I'm not a fan of this original movie, but I have to acknowledge it's well done and influential. And I think that's where I'm gonna end it. You guys have anything else you want to say about these movies?
No,
I think that the guys in the original movie would whoop the asses of the guys in the remake if put up against each other.
Even though Chris Hemsworth is a Marine. All right, I'm gonna hit recording. That's it. You guys want to hang on